one. Go for it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ross the Boss, and welcome to Waiver Wire Pickup and Baseball Talk. I'm Ross the Boss here in Lipstick City, Los Angeles. I'm happy to be here. It's overcast here in LA. My co-host, Vlad to the Bone, Casey
Always
Scheinfold.
here.
Say hi to everybody, Casey.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Ross, it's good to
Yes.
see you, even though you can't really see me right now.
I'm just looking at the camera right now. I can't visually see everybody. Technical problems, but if you can see me and hear me, everything's great.
That's right.
So let's talk baseball. We're not talking NBA, even though it was a great Game 7 last night. We're not going to talk about it, Casey. We're not going to have it.
Okay.
We're just talking baseball here. Let's talk Major League Baseball. We'll start with your favorite topic, Aaron Judge. Yesterday, he was a man among men. Tell me what he did yesterday, Casey.
2 more home runs to become number 5 all time on the list for Yankees for multiple home run games, by the way, joining the likes of Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Mickey Mantle, and Joe DiMaggio. And then on top of that, he robs Teoscar Hernandez of a home run in right field later in the game. I think the 8th inning.
I saw the unbelievable catch. And the crazy thing about him is, I think I sent it to you, is like he has 17 home runs for the year, I believe. And he was on the DL for 10 days.
And he's only one
last year at this time, he had 18 home runs, and he had 60 home runs for the year. So do you think he can repeat 60 home runs, Casey?
I'm not going to bet against him at this point. Holy cow. At what point do they start giving him the Barry Bonds treatment and just walk him every time? But even Bonds went 70 home runs when they tried to do that to him. So I'm not going to bet against him. He and Pete Alonso are going to be a fun battle to watch here throughout the summer, I think, in New York.
I agree. I mean, he is definitely showing why he's like a top fantasy pick this year in many leagues, and why Trey Turner is not a top pick
not living
in many leagues.
For sure.
Yeah. So let's talk Liam Hendriks. Great story.
The standing ovation for him was awesome.
It was awesome. If you don't know the story, cancer survivor, went through treatment, was just activated over the weekend, and he gave up a run in 1 inning. Big deal. But he is, he's back, and he's throwing pretty hard. I mean, he looked good. He's going to need a little time to get in the groove of things. But between you and I, is it somebody you're targeting to pick up in fantasy baseball or not?
Oh, yeah. If he's available, I would scoop him up. He's going to be the closer for the White Sox for the summer. So if you're in a league that gives you points for saves, I don't think you can. I mean, closer is such a volatile position. There's so many there's so many closers who are killing your team. It can't hurt to add Liam Hendriks, because this guy was the best closer in baseball with the Oakland Athletics a few years ago. And so we know he's got the stuff.
I mean, it's a great story, and in any leagues I can pick this guy up, I'm trying to pick him up. Let's talk a team that's kind of under the radar. No one's talking. Everybody's talking about Tampa Bay in the American League. You are, I am. We don't talk about the Texas Rangers at all. They have the second most runs in the league. They are ripping the cover off the ball the past 2 weeks. They're in first place in the West American League. I mean, they're playing really good baseball. Second best record in the American League, actually. Is this a team that you think that can just keep it up and win that division, or do you think Houston will? What's going to happen to the Rangers?
I think it all depends on Houston's health. Their pitching has been pretty decimated by injury. I still like Houston's overall roster better, but heck, I mean, Texas's offense is elite at this point. Simeon and Seager and Jung and
Lowe, Nathaniel Lowe. I mean, look at his stats, Casey Scheinfold. Unbelievable.
So it's a question of whether their pitching can hold up. I mean, and they're doing this without DeGrom. Imagine if DeGrom was healthy. So, they're for real. I think they're a legit playoff team. I don't know if they're going to win the division because Houston's closed the gap some on them. But who the heck knows?
Garcia, the outfielder who no one respects at all, leading the league in RBIs with 49.
Yeah, I give the champs still all the cred until they're beaten. So I'm going to keep the Astros as the division winner, but I don't think the Rangers are going anywhere.
Let's talk biggest news today that I thought, just because I'm a Reds fan. Ellie De La Cruz on his Instagram recently said to Jimmy Butler, "I'll see you in Boston," and the Reds are playing in Boston right now. Do you think the number one prospect in baseball is going to be brought up today? I didn't hear anything yet, unless I missed it.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything official. I don't.
But I mean, that's what De La Cruz did on his Instagram recently.
I saw that.
He saw. Yeah, I think I sent you. But I mean, do you think he's going to be brought up? First of all, do you think he's going to be brought up, and do you think all the hype? Do you think it's worth picking him up in your league?
I mean, Matt McClin is doing pretty well from what I've seen so far. I don't know. Are they planning on playing one at third and one at short? That would be my question. I would pick him up speculatively just because if he does get called up, it's somebody you immediately want on your roster. This guy is the number one prospect in baseball for a reason. He's a 5-category stud who's just a freak of an athlete and is crushing the ball in the minors right now. So I don't see why you wouldn't want to pick him up. I would imagine he's owned in most leagues at this point, or at least most leagues where they kind of are aware of what's going on in baseball.
Well, again, he's not officially brought up yet, so there's no reason. I mean, people are kind of hesitant until he's brought up. I get it, but I mean, they say there's no such thing as a surefire prospect. Do you think this guy's surefire?
No, I don't think anybody's surefire, but he's certainly worth the gamble. I mean, he's worth the risk, the bet. I mean, he's the number one prospect, unanimous in baseball by all the different websites that kind of track prospects for a reason. The guy's got all the tools. Will he be Ronald Acuna part 2? I hope so, for his sake and for Reds fans. But he could be Brian Taylor, or Jurickson Profar. These guys who were. Jurickson Profar was the number one prospect for 2 or 3 years running, and now he's a journeyman Major League Baseball player. So I'm willing to bet on him, but nothing's a guarantee.
You're 100% right. Nothing. The only prospect ever that was a guarantee, I would say Hall of Famer, was Ken Griffey Jr. That's it. That's the only one I knew that was like when he was 19 years old and the Reds brought him up. I said to myself, I'm going to try to get as many Ken Griffey Jr. baseball cards I could, and which I did, which I have a lot of Upper Deck ones. It was the first year of Upper Deck, 89, and that's the year I got all the Griffeys. But all that being said, I hope you're right. I hope this guy has a huge hit, huge career ahead of him. It'd be great for the Reds and for the city of Cincinnati. I agree with you 100%. Let's talk waiver wire pickup, KC Scheinfold. I always start with catchers. Who's your number one catcher this week?
Well, I think it's got to be Francisco Alvarez in New York, the Mets. In the last week, he's batting .400 with 3 home runs and 8 RBIs. They released or designated Gary Sanchez for assignment.
No, they released him. He signed with San Diego today.
Yeah. So the catcher position is always thin, and it's thin on the waiver wire, but Francisco Alvarez, for some reason, is still only 50% owned. So if he's out there in your league, he's somebody you absolutely have to scoop up.
And Casey, let me just 364, 3 home runs, 5 home runs, 13 RBIs in the past 2 weeks. This guy's tearing the cover off the ball, and you're 100% right. If he's available in your league, you pick him up, because I don't know if he could be a streaker. It could be a guy you hold on the whole year. I don't know. But pick him up now regardless, because he's streaking. So pick him up now. Somebody else that you picked up in our league. I watch every move you make. I watch. I'm not some schmuck off the street that doesn't watch what Casey Scheinfold doesn't do. A guy named Christian Bethancourt, who plays for the Tampa Bay Rays. You picked him up. He's not Jewish, though, with the name Christian. I'm 100% he's not Jewish.
Yeah, it's a safe bet.
Safe bet. But tell me why you picked up Christian.
Well, he qualifies a catcher also, I believe.
Yep.
Which is the big reason I picked him up, because he's part of the best offense in baseball. He qualifies at a position of scarcity at catcher where he doesn't play every day as a catcher. So he's in the field some, and his numbers are, he's not going to lead the league in home runs. He's not going to steal any bags. He's not even in a position to drive in runs, but he hits for a good average. He scores a lot of runs. He doesn't hurt me when I'm looking at a catcher position, unless I have like the Adley Rutschman or the Will Smith type of player I'm looking for guys at that position who aren't going to hurt my overall numbers.
I like it. Let's talk first base. Casey Scheinfeld. I'll go first just because I like mentioning Reds, and you know
I know who you're going with. Yep.
He plays third base too, but he's qualifies for first. Spencer Steer, 365, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs the past 2 weeks. And that Reds ballpark is an easy place to hit, and it's getting hotter in Cincinnati. It's going to be in the 90s coming up next week. So it's going to be balls going to be flying out of that place. The Reds are playing Boston right now in the friendly confines of Fenway Park, which I'm excited about because the Reds really don't go to Fenway that often. My favorite memory is, of course, in '75 when the Reds won the World Series, which I was a little kid. I wasn't at the game. I wish I was. But Spencer Steer, I like the guy. Hits for average, has a little power, can steal some bases. What do you think?
I like Spencer Steer. He was up there with me as well, near the top. I have him on the third base side just because I think a third base is much thinner and harder to find players. But yeah, he's playing great. Luke Raley in Tampa Bay, another Tampa Bay Ray, has been doing well for the past couple of weeks. He has 3 stolen bases just this week. That's going to help your team a lot. And then the guy who plays everywhere, Brendan Donovan, first, second, third, short, and outfield. He's getting regular playing time right now in St. Louis. He's got 2 home runs and 2 steals this week. So he's hitting the ball well, and St. Louis's offense is finally clicking.
I agree. They're finally waking up, St. Louis. I mean, if you're a gambler and you took them to win the division a few weeks ago, you've got really good odds. Now the odds are kind of getting in the favor of St. Louis, but St. Louis is playing a lot better baseball. And another Tampa Bay, I got to mention, another guy that plays for Tampa Bay, just jump on the bandwagon, is Harold Ramirez. I mean, I don't know if you've
talked about him for weeks.
I mean, this guy's built. I mean, I watched the Ray game a few days ago, and Harold Ramirez, he's built like a guy that can hit 30 home runs. I mean, he's a big dude, yeah. Big guy. And, he's for the year, he's hitting 295. And, again, if he can hit 300, and he's not going to hurt your team at all if you need a first baseman. I mean, this guy can hit. Anybody else at first base I'm missing?
Well, before I name anybody, Uncle Ted says, "What up?" So say hi to
Uncle Ted. Tell us, Ted, Uncle Ted. No, Uncle Ted does it the right way, Casey. He types this in the players that he likes this week, and we'll mention them on the air. But if anybody else is out there that wants to talk about certain players they have, ideas of picking up, and we can give our 2 cents, or trades, or people you want to pick up that you're not quite sure about, or any questions, we can answer them. Right, Case?
Absolutely. So, Ted, just so you know, Uncle Ted, Ross is having some technical issues. He can't see the screen, but we can see him.
Yeah.
Albert Merriquin says hello also. Hey, Albert, it's good to see you. Good afternoon to you. The only other guy I'm going to mention is somebody I've been talking about. It's another Red. I don't know why he's not called up. He's been tearing the cover off the ball and hitting home runs like it's nobody's business. And Joey Votto is not exactly showing he's ready to come back or ready to produce.
I think June. The Joey Votto update I have for everybody is he was mentioning that he'll be ready in June to be called up. Well, he'll be ready. I don't know if the Reds are ready for him, but he'll be ready. It's his last year of his $220 million contract too. Just so you know, I don't think he'll be re-signed with the Reds, even though he should just retire as a Red. I think that's the best way to go out. I mean, he doesn't have to prove anything, right?
Yeah, no, he doesn't. He's borderline Hall of Famer already. Uncle Ted wanted to mention Ryan Noda of Oakland. In the last couple of weeks, the first baseman outfielder, I believe, for Oakland is batting .306 with 3 home runs, 9 RBIs. He's even stolen a bag. So that's a good choice, Ryan. Uncle Ted, I like Ryan.
It is. And Oakland beat Atlanta last night, Casey. How about that? How about those apples?
And Miami went into Boston in Game 7 and beat him. So
There you go. Let's talk second base. Somebody who I always liked this guy, and he never really got respect this season, especially in fantasy. He wasn't really drafted that much. If he was in the last few rounds, is Ketel Marte of Arizona.
Yeah,
he's starting to hit, Case. He's hitting .348 the past 2 weeks with a couple of home runs, and before he got hurt, like a few years ago, remember he had like 30 home runs. I mean, he was like he was on one of your top of your list for second baseman. I remember
He
you
was a
talking about
power.
it.
He was a power speed guy that could
Yeah,
actually deliver. To yeah, his year I think it was 2021. No, 2019. I think it was right before the
I think
pandemic.
you're right.
Was
Before the
pretty
pandemic,
insane.
correct.
And so yeah, I mean Ketel Marte I think is over 60% owned though, isn't he?
I don't think so.
Okay.
People dropped him like the plague. He didn't perform at all in April. Casey Scheinfeld, he didn't do anything. People were dropping him and picking up other people at second base very
I
quickly.
have him at 79% owned, but that's
Oh,
just
they
me.
do really. I thought he
Yeah.
was less. I maybe I was looking at ESPN.
Now
or
I'm going to
something.
name somebody who's over 60% also, but he's only 62%. So I think this is doable. And that's Ryan McMahon in Colorado. Obviously, we love anybody in Colorado's offense as a second and third baseman. In the last 7 days, he's batting .462 with 4 home runs and 13 RBIs. The guy is just absolutely on fire. So how do you not pick up somebody who's raking like that?
Somebody else I mentioned last week, I'll mention him again because he hasn't like got cold yet, but he got hurt yesterday, Casey. So he's like day to day is Owen Miller of Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Past 2 weeks, 341, 3 home runs. But again, caution Will Robinson. He is day to day. So if you pick him up and he doesn't play, don't be crying to Casey Scheinfeld or myself because we want to hear it. But he is eligible at like 3 different positions. Good utility guy, not a bad pickup. He's not be. Hopefully, he won't go on the DL. I haven't heard anything about that yet, but you never know. I like him, and that's really it at second base. Casey Scheinfeld. Who do you like at shortstop?
Shortstop. Let's see. Who do I have at shortstop today?
There's somebody that's not even close of 60% yet that should be picked up.
Well, we already mentioned Ellie De La Cruz because if he is coming up, he's somebody you have to pick up stat. But how about the other shortstop prospect that got called up in Cincinnati, and that's Matt McLean.
Yeah, not 60% yet, which is surprising.
48%, but he's batting .500 the past week. 2 home runs, a stolen base, 7 runs scored, 6 RBIs. So, I mean, again, Cincinnati's could have a really, really, really good team in the next couple of years.
Oh, unless the Reds don't sign these guys or trade them away for cash or donuts. The funny thing about McLean is, I follow all the Reds players on Instagram, and he went to a local bar last week in Cincinnati after the game. He wanted to get wanted to socialize with the locals. He's a single guy, so maybe he's looking for women. Who knows what he's doing? He doesn't do anything illegal, but only one person recognized him at the bar. He said in his Instagram, which is funny. And he's a starting shortstop for the Cincinnati Reds. And the bar was like across the street from the stadium, which is hilarious. It just shows you that, no one knows who this guy is, especially his home. His hometown knows the name, but they don't know what he looks like. Another guy at shortstop I like is Will Castro of Minnesota. He plays a bunch of positions. He's a streaker, Casey Scheinfeld, which means I don't know how long he can keep this up, but we'll see. But he's hitting .348 with 3 home runs the past couple weeks. Again, if you need help, I think he's outfield, third base, and shortstop. I believe. I mean, he's available in many positions. Top of my head. But is there any other shortstops that you like that I'm missing?
Well, there's not too many. Uncle Ted has a few names for us. Kyle Manzardo is the big hotshot first base prospect for Tampa Bay. He's been raking in the minors all year. He certainly doesn't have anything left to prove there. It's a question of whether Tampa can find a spot for them in his lineup. So I like him, Ted. He's more of a wait and see guy for me because I'm not sure where the spot is. He mentioned Zach Short, who's played second base, I think, for the most part in Detroit in the past couple of weeks. He's he's raking right now, but his track record is pretty poor. So I'm not going to invest big in Zach Short. I think he's hot right now, but he's kind of like we talked about Paul DeJong last week or the week before, where for a week he might look great, but then he's going to hit 0.048 for the rest of the time. Zachary Neto, the top prospect in the Angels, who they called up to play shortstop, he's been holding his own. And so they're on a big push with their players there. He's only 5% owned on the season. He's batting .250, 3 home runs, 3 RBIs. So that is somebody else who you can look at. So Uncle Ted, those are some good names.
And I think the Angels are going to do like a little fire sale during the All-Star break and get rid of some of their players and bring in some prospects. Ohtani looks like, I bet if I had to make a bet where Otani's going to be in August, I would say the Mets. That's me talking.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think
I think it'd be a New York Met. I just have a feeling. I don't know why, but we'll see what happens. Mets have a really deep in the minors. They have a
you
lot
just
of.
don't want to admit he's going to be a Dodger.
I don't. I don't think the Dodgers have enough in the farm system to get him. I really don't. I want to see what Uncle Ted says. I say New York Met. We'll see what happens. Let's talk third base, which I felt was the most like, unless the guys that are multiple positions we can mention again, but there wasn't really much pickings there. But Casey, who did you have?
In the multiple position guys, well, you mentioned Willie Castro. We mentioned Brendan Donovan.
Right. Anybody else we're missing a third? I had the same guy I mentioned last.
Zach McKinstry in Detroit is playing really well right now.
Yep.
351 over the last 2 weeks, 5 stolen bases. So that's something that can really help you. But and you mentioned Owen Miller. Those are kind of the multi-position guys I like.
And Jameer
Uncle Ted agrees with me, by the way. He says Dodger.
Candelario is still hitting the ball pretty well, Casey, right?
Yes, Giant, your boy Candyman.
Candyman is still hitting. He's a streaker. I mentioned him last week. He's still hitting this week. So if you need a third baseman that's not too flashy, that could be available, he could be your guy. Let's talk outfield. I will start with a prospect that's probably 98% not owned in leagues, which you can probably pick up. And the Rockies just picked him up. But this guy in the minors, Casey, was stats were like off the charts in the minors. And this guy, I believe, is going to be their everyday right fielder. Nolan Jones is his name. Don't get fooled by the last name of Jones. He's not a common player. This guy's really good.
Yeah. I picked him up. I picked him up about a month ago when he got called up, but he came up for like a game and was sent back down, so I dropped him. I guess I'm regretting now that I did that, but he's a power speed guy. He can do it both, and so it's a good corner outfield pickup. I
just think Colorado in the summertime and this kid hitting third or fourth in the lineup, I think he'll have a pretty good year. And I think Colorado's way behind this guy. So if you can pick him up and kind of stash him away somewhere, he's playing right now, but he didn't play yesterday, but he's on the roster. But I believe this is the future right fielder for the Colorado Rockies. I think they'll keep this kid up, and I think he'll play every day starting very soon. What other outfielders do you like, Casey?
There's a couple. Michael Conforto is 62% owned, but again, that's close enough for me to mention him. He's been on fire for the past month. Last 2 weeks alone, 357, 3 home runs, 10 RBIs. Akil Baddoo, somebody we've talked about off and on over the years. He gets hot for Detroit and can go really bananas for extended periods of time. We might be in one of those stretches now. 3 home runs, 12 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, a 320 average. And then Mitch Haniger is in San Francisco now. He's not in Seattle, I think, and Pittsburgh were the last 2 places he banged. He's hitting the ball really well in San Francisco. 348, 10 runs scored, 10 RBIs in the last couple weeks.
And somebody else Tampa Bay's like the team that I'm picking. I'm just picking all the players out of. Is Jose Siri, not Siri.
Mm-hmm.
When I say Siri, like all my stuff lights up in my
all your Apple devices. Yeah,
all my Apple devices just lit up when I said Siri. Jose Siri of Tampa Bay, 5 home runs. Casey Scheinfeld in the past 2 weeks, 2 stolen bases, and he's hitting over 280 the past 2 weeks. That's not bad. And he plays for Tampa Bay, which is leading the leave in runs. Okay, did you hear that? Did you hear when I said his name?
Yeah.
The device just said something. And also a guy you mentioned last week, who I mentioned beginning of the season, is Brian De La Cruz.
Yep.
It looks like he's playing every day. He's hitting 320, 3 home runs, 2 stolen bases the past 2 weeks. And the Marlins are not like the laughing stock of the league. I mean, they really are playing good baseball, even without their even their Cy Young pitcher is average
in the playoffs right now if the season
ended
today.
They're playing good baseball. I agree. And I think there's 2 people that are doing it. De La Cruz and Jorge Soler. He's over 60, so I'm not saying pick him up, but I mean 5 home runs in the past 5 days. I mean, he's
on a tear.
I mean, he's
Uncle Ted wanted Uncle Ted's a little disappointed in you because I think you didn't mention a red there in TJ Friedel.
Not done yet, but keep going.
He said TJ Friedel, and I agree. That's a pretty good pickup right now.
TJ Friedel, again, the Reds have these young, hungry players that want to prove themselves. And when they bring up, when they bring up Ellie and they bring up some other, there's other guys in the minors too that are tearing it up. It's going to be interesting what happens in Cincinnati if they'll hold on to these guys or if they trade them. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I agree. Another guy that's tearing it up that right now is like just ripping the cover off the ball, and he's available in a lot of leagues. He plays for Atlanta. Is Marcell Ozuna, 341, 3 home runs, 9 RBIs. He cooled down a little bit early in the week, but they're playing Oakland this week. And if you need an outfielder, it could be a pretty good pickup because Oakland's ERA, team ERA, Casey, over 6. They're giving up more than 6 runs a game as a team. That's unbelievable. I mean, how can you win? They're winning like a third of their games. They won yesterday, so they shouldn't win for the next 5 games. They went on an 11-game losing streak in Oakland. I mean, it's just sad. I mean, my plan is this in Oakland. Tell me if you agree, Casey. They should play one more season there this season, move the franchise to Vegas, and just play in the minor league facility until their stadium's ready. What do you think? Do you like the idea or not?
I do.
Yes! Casey likes it.
I'm with you.
Casey likes it because they're not going to draw. I mean, you know how much they charge for parking in Oakland? A friend of mine just went to the game a few days ago. They charge $50 to park at the stadium in Oakland. That's how much they charge at Dodger Stadium. So
could you imagine
even before you walk in,
horrible team? Yeah.
It's $50 unless you take the trainers, unless you take the subway or train, whatever it's called in Oakland. But again, it's just who would want to pay money to watch a minor league team play? Might as well play in a minor league stadium. They're a minor league team, right?
I agree. Leody Tavares was mentioned by Uncle Ted. I think that was also Dan's waiver wire pickup of the day. Dr. Dan, for those of you who watch on Thursdays, he mentioned him. This guy is scoring runs at a very, very high rate. So somebody else who is important for you to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Dr. Ted, we talked about the Rangers and how strong they are. Offense wise. I mean, they're just scoring a lot of runs. They're second in the league. And I think any Ranger you can pick up and any Tampa Bay guy you can pick that plays regularly is a plus. I really do. If these guys are available, pick them up or trade for them. Corey Seager, by the end of the year, he could be an MVP candidate. You never know. That's how well he's good enough.
Doing. It's a question of whether he stays healthy.
Exactly. But, every time I turn the TV on, he's hitting a home run. Let's talk starting pitchers. One of the pitchers I like pitched yesterday and pitched pretty well is Bobby Miller of the Dodgers.
The rookies are pretty strong right now.
I mean, Bobby Miller, one of the top prospects in the Dodgers organization, 2-0, 1.64 ERA in the past 2 weeks. I mean, this guy, if you can get him, pick him up now. I hopefully he's available in your league. I doubt he is, but maybe. But he's somebody that I just want to say, it's like Casey, you've been talking about this guy a long time, and I want to give you props because he's somebody that you were on like weeks ago before even they brought this kid up. And this guy has great stuff, great control, and he's a cool guy. He has a tattoo on his arm. He's a cool kid, and he's cool under pressure playing in Dodger Stadium. What other pitchers do you like, Casey?
Well, Kyle Gibson is pitching right now really well for Baltimore. They're playing some good baseball. He's got to start against Cleveland, I think, tomorrow. That's not a bad team to pitch against. Nope. Cleveland's got a couple good pitchers. Tanner Bybee and Logan Allen are both pitching really well right now.
Logan Allen, Casey, pitched yesterday. Woo!
Yeah, and they're both under 50%.
He gave up no runs, and he was throwing. I was watching him pitch. He looked great. And to go back to Kyle Gibson, 2-0 the past 2 weeks, 0.64 ERA. So when you said he's not doing too bad, he's not doing too bad at all.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then I talked about him last week. Jared Schuster, still pitching pretty well. His ERA went up a little bit, but it's still only 3.78, almost a strikeout per inning, less than a 0.8 WHIP. So a part of a great team, so he'll be in line for a lot of wins, has a good defense behind him. So that's somebody else I would consider.
Yeah, I mean, if you have any Kansas City Royals, except maybe Chapman, you should not have them on your team. Their pitching staff looks just awful.
Well, yesterday they had a combined almost perfect game.
Okay, I'll give you one game, but overall, them in Oakland. I mean, Sears goes today. Like
It's JP Sears.
It's just it's hard to watch sometimes with the Oakland and Kansas City games and how bad their pitching is. But it's going to get worse because any pitchers that are doing well at all, they'll be grabbed by teams in July in trades. So the worst will get worse and the better will get better, as we say in July. Just because before All-Star break, everybody likes to improve their team for the playoff run, which we'll talk about more when we get closer to it, because there'll be certain players that we should target. And we love talking about that and predict trades. And of course, I'm usually right on what player goes where. Casey, you sometimes you sometimes pick the team too. I have to give you props on that. Anybody else? Any other starters, Casey? That he's not pitching well this year, and I don't know if it's over for him. I don't know if he's just still hurt. I don't know what you do with him. If I had him on my team, I don't. Is Max Scherzer of the Mets? I mean,
yeah, I'm not sure. I mean,
what do you do? Do you trade him? Do you just hold on to him? What do you do with him?
Well, I don't think you can get much for him right now. That's the problem with trying to trade him. He's like one of the oldest pitchers in the league, and he's pitching poorly right now. I think you need him to have 2 or 3 kind of vintage Max Scherzer starts, and that's when you then try to deal him. Uncle Ted wanted to mention Emmett Sheehan in the Dodgers system. Yeah, he's pitching lights out for Double-A, although they've called up a couple prospects recently, and I don't think Sheehan's on the 40-man roster yet, so that could get in the way of whether or not he gets called up. But I agree with you, Uncle Ted. I think he's proven his strikeout numbers are insane. Another prospect I mentioned is Gavin Williams. I've talked about him before for the Cleveland Indians or Cleveland Guardians. My apologies. No offense intended. Guardians. That
the
guy
dollar in the dollar in the bucket.
Right. He's another one I would look at stashing. And Uncle Ted mentioned Mike Soroka. If you remember Soroka from a few years ago, he might have been a fantasy first-round pick pre-pandemic, but then he tore his Achilles.
Yep.
Then tore the same Achilles during a rehab when he was coming back from it. The kid was just.
He pitched on Sunday.
He pitched on Sunday pretty well. So maybe he's back. He's never been a high strikeout guy. He was a weak contact guy. So his cap on his fantasy utility of strikeouts are important in your league is always going to be lower than some of the other elite pitchers. But the guy is really, really good.
He's really good. High prospect, like you said. And Max Fried is coming back very soon, too. Somebody that's not coming back very soon, and I want to give you a bad time about it because he's like.
Which one, Rodon?
I put him in the same category as Carlos Stanton. It's like these guys just disappear in the IL. You never hear anything. Is Carlos Rodon?
I know. They say he's progressing because he's throwing.
What's that mean? Progressing? He's been out since the eclipse. Casey hasn't done anything.
They're saying it's not the elbow anymore. Now he tweaked his back, and so
the back.
Whatever. As long as the Yankees are in playoff distance and get healthy at the right time, Severino's pitching well.
So he did come back.
Garrett Cole still is pitching well. I don't think Nasty Nestor is long for the majors after this year. I just think that they might have figured him out. Clark Schmidt. Who knows what you're going to get from him? Domingo Germán is going to try to pitch without a mountain of glue on his hands. That might affect his ability to throw. So the Yankees, their rotation is dangerously thin. I have to accept that. So they'll have to steal somebody from another team by the deadline.
And Carlos, in your other player, G. Stanton. I mean,
Giancarlo Stanton. Who knows? I mean,
I had him last year. I waived him pretty quick. I mean, does he just live on the IR? I mean, is that where he stays the whole season?
He does. He looks. I don't know. I don't think. I'm not sure what's going on with him. If he's just that fragile or unlucky or what. I mean, it's funny. He was like an amazingly healthy player up until he took that fastball to the face in Milwaukee a few years back and had to miss the end of what would have been an MVP season for him. And since then, it's been oblique, shoulder, ankle, hamstring, quad, whatever. It's all this soft tissue stuff, and I don't know. I don't even think of him when I think of the Yankees right now.
I haven't seen he hasn't played in forever. I mean, and he's nothing. Players you hear reports about them like coming back in a certain time. There's not one report about him.
No, there's
not.
I
mean, Max Fried, at least you hear from Atlanta, like, yeah, he's very close to coming back. He should be back next week. You know what I mean? That's the report. That's what you say. But and Tyler Glasnow looked good on his start on Saturday.
Yeah, I was excited. I have him in a couple leagues, so I was happy to see that.
His stat line, I think he pitched 4 innings, gave up a run or whatever, but
he struck out 8.
His velocity was there, and he looked great. I mean, he looked really good.
I'm not worried about him. I'm worried about him staying healthy. I'm not worried about the stuff.
Me either. I think he looks terrific. So let's end with the closers. I have one guy, and again, you have him on your team. I could not get him. Tell me why you like him, though. Miguel Castro of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Tell me why you picked him up.
Well, I mean, look, we're in a league where it's incredibly hard to find closers. And so when you find one who's getting the opportunities, you scoop him up. He is historically not been a command and control guy. He had a lot of walks. He always had so much movement on his pitches that it was hard to hit. The problem was, could he find the strike zone? For some reason, he's in a rhythm right now where he's finding the strike zone. So I'm going to enjoy the ride while it lasts. I have a feeling I'll be dropping him sometime in July when his ERA balloons up to 6 something because he.
Well, you just jinxed him. Good job, Casey.
You're welcome. But Craig Kimbrel,
the past 2 weeks, 3 saves, 0.00 ERA that was Casey's GPA in college, and it's actually. Let's see if he can keep it up. I mean, that's the whole thing. Can he keep up this tremendous pace of not giving up a run? We'll see what happens.
Hey, I hope so for my team. Craig Kimbrel is also under 60% owned, and he's right now getting the save chances until Alvarado comes back in Philadelphia. And he's not doing a terrible job. Less than a 1 whip, 3.6 ERA, more than a strikeout per inning, 3 saves in the last 2 weeks. So you can do a lot worse than Craig Kimbrel right now.
Yeah. And again, with save people, it's a rotating door in a lot of these teams. There's not like one guy that's going to be closing. It's a committee, especially the teams like Tampa Bay and Texas. And a lot of these teams do a committee type situation. Even St. Louis now is doing a committee situation. So
yeah, Giovanni Gallegos is worth owning. That brings it up.
Yeah. He's had a few saves the past couple of weeks and his ERA is way down and he looks good. I just feel if they spread it around a little bit, these guys don't feel the pressure and they pitch a lot better. That's my feeling.
Yeah.
And some of these guys can handle the pressure, but
and you can't prepare for them if you don't know who's coming each day.
And in LA, there's Caleb Ferguson who gets some save opportunities right now that throws heat. And there's guys that are getting save opportunities all over. So don't worry about relief pitchers. They'll always be out there. There'll always be a guy that you can pick up that will get some saves for you. So don't stress about that stuff. Don't trade for a reliever. Don't worry about it. Worry about other categories. Right, Casey?
Yeah. I'm with you.
Any other questions? Because Casey and I will see you guys next Tuesday. We'll see you guys Thursday at 4:30, 1:30 Pacific with Dr. Dan Ratner, where we'll talk more in depth about fantasy baseball, and we'll give Dan a bad time about his Guardians, and we'll have a great time on Thursday because there'll be a lot of stuff going on, especially in these great series that are starting tonight.
Hopefully, for Ross's sake, Ellie De La Cruz will have been called up so we can talk about that some more because the Reds are getting exciting.
They are. And they're in Boston this weekend. So they're in this week, so I'm excited about that too because, as you know, I can't stand Boston fans. So I just we were swept by the Yankees early in the month. So I'm hoping we can sweep Boston for you, Casey. We'll see what we can do.
I would like that very much.
And I'm Ross the Boss. That's Flats' Bone, Casey Scheinfeld. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.